Well, this will be fun today, folks. We're going to look at what weather actually happened for that May 12th lunation period forecast that I did last week. And we're going to validate that, and you can find the link for that forecast on the screen now or at the end of this video. And of course, what you're here for, we're diving into the lunation forecast for May 20th to May 26th, 2025, what it means and what to keep your eye on during this time. Hey there, I'm Daniel J. Rocha, your weather-wise astrologer, where we forecast weather for season and soul. Just a quick reminder, this weather analysis is for Toronto, Ontario and surrounding area, as that is where I live. However, do note that the planetary influences are indeed global. If you wish to see forecasts and charts for your area, or if you're looking to gain deeper insights into your life and your mission, let me know in the comments below, or simply reach out to me for a reading. This here is where the magic happens. I have all of the charts and information laid out for the current season, that's spring 2025, and this is how we're going to look behind and look ahead to what is coming. So let's dive right in. So if you remember from the Aries ingress chart, this Uranus was down here on the 4th house cusp, which promised a particularly windy spring, and we have seen that up to this point. It has been a very windy spring, windier than normal, and now we look at the May 12th to May 20th lunation chart, where we see the moon here on the cusp of the 4th house. It's about 4 degrees off, but I'm still counting it. What I do want to bring up that's really fascinating is I'm going to pull up another chart after this that talked about a tornado event in St. Louis, Missouri, and you're going to see what I mean by when planets are closer to these angles, how much more intense they are. And we'll look at this, the locality maps, the astrocartography maps for that as well. I'm going to be talking in keywords here to make it a little more simple and more flowy. We have Scorpio, which is a sign that is extreme, oppressive, it intensifies. The moon is chilly, wet, and changeable. And we have Leo here on the cusp of the first, that is hot and dry, very hot and dry sign. But there are no planets here. So we look at the ruler of Leo and we go to the sun. And the sun is up here in the 10th house, again, close to that 10th house cusp, the MC, and the sun can bring pretty nice weather. And in a conjunction with Uranus, it wasn't quite there yet on May the 12th, but after a few days, it formed that conjunction and we saw more brilliant, bright days because the sun and Uranus together can produce that, especially in the sign of Taurus. And Mercury catching up here to the 10th house cusp as well speaks to more wind. Again, fulfilling that natal chart promise, and Mercury bringing in that wind did not disappoint. It has been very windy this past week. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 days, maybe one day where it wasn't. And again, that was that Leo in the 1st house where it's hot and dry and doesn't have any wind associated with this sign. Do you remember how I said the planets are thematic no matter where we are in the world? Well, here's something very interesting. I'm looking at the ruler of Scorpio, or the rulers of Scorpio. That's Mars and Pluto. Pluto is forming a very direct aspect, a square, right to the minute with Mercury. And what that means is that its influence is playing out really strongly. Pluto is a very, very slow moving planet, and it's in retrograde, meaning that it's acting out sort of ways, and it's moving even slower. It's allowing its energy to manifest more fully. When a planet's moving its full speed, it kind of moves around, casts its rays, and then it kind of moves on to another part of the world. But these planets that are much further out there, Pluto being the farthest, has more time to cast its rays. And that's why when planets are in retrograde, they tend to manifest their influences more strongly. How we perceive those energies is up to us, and depending where we are in the world. Anyway, I digress. Mars is going to be forming a direct square with Mercury in a few days, May 17th to be exact. That is the day that the tornado hit St. Louis, Missouri. And with Pluto putting its energy with Mercury and Mars, that is a trifecta of trouble. Mars, very hot and dry. Mercury is sort of the chameleon. It takes the energy of whatever planet's influencing it, and it's a very windy planet. Mars is all about heat and dryness, and Pluto is about extremes. That is likely what caused that tornado in St. Louis, Missouri. But we're going to take a look at that chart to get more in depth to it in just a moment. I'm going to animate the chart here for you just to show you coming up to that May 17th. And remember, this is thematic, even though this is in Pickering, right? We had that Mercury squaring that Mars almost right to that minute on May 17th. And that was the combination of Mercury and Mars being very windy, very tempestuous. And we also have Saturn in the mix here. If you'll see that with Mars as well, almost right to the minute. These three planets working in tandem together are the very intense storm makers. So I will cover the St. Louis, Missouri tornado more in depth in just a moment. I want to get on to the May 20th, 2025 forecast because that's what we're here for. You can find, again, timestamps in the description below. But let's dive right in. So we immediately go to the sign of Virgo on the cusp of the 4th because that's the most powerful point in the chart. And there's no planets here, but we look at Virgo, and Virgo is a cold, dry, and blustery sign. We also go to its ruler, which is Mercury, and Mercury being the windy planet. It is in the sign of Taurus. Taurus is moderating. It can bring farmers' rains, but what's really important to note here is Mercury is coming up to that Uranus and Sun conjunction. It's going to get very interesting here. This, to me, just feels cold. It's cooler, more winds because Mercury and Uranus together are definitely windy. And when Mercury catches up with the Sun, that is going to be probably a storm indicator there. We move on to the first house, and it's in the sign of Cancer. Cancer is a cool and wet sign, and it is ruled by the moon. We don't have any planets here, so we go to see what the moon is doing. Something to note here is the degrees. I don't want to get too technical with this, but they're at very low degrees, meaning that the influence of Virgo and of Cancer are going to be pretty much throughout the duration of our lunation forecast. So we got two cooler signs, one dry, one wet, and that can just mean we're going to have a cooler week ahead. And with the sign of the moon, it is in Aquarius, but going just about into the sign of Pisces. And Pisces can be more moderating as well. And what moderating means is if we've been seeing several days in a row of like cold, moderating means the temperatures get a little bit warmer. This is a moisture chart though, because these are lunation charts. Moon is going to be going to the sign of Pisces, making it more wet. More wet. So we already have more cooling, more wet influences, and breezy as well, thanks to the sign of Virgo here. And this stellium that's happening here with Mercury catching up to Uranus, cold, dry, electric. This chart to me is colder than normal. It's probably a bit more moist than normal as well. And that's what I think we can expect for this week. And I'm going to animate the chart here as well. So I'm not doing a day-to-day here per se, but let's see what shifts are happening. And we'll see here now that the moon is also catching up to Saturn on the 22nd of May. And we see that Mercury is getting closer to that Uranus as well. So this can definitely be a bit more of a storm indicator. And I'm also paying attention to when the Mars and the moon do their interactions as well. And we're going to have a bit of a popcorn thing happening as the moon passes through Saturn, Neptune, and Venus. this could definitely trigger some weather events happening through here. And right at this point, we get Uranus and Mercury forming this conjunction around the 25th of May. And that can mean that cooler, dry, very dry influence. Although in the sign of Taurus, again, it could moderate it a little bit. But this could just mean the moderation could be away from dry and could be bringing in some more moisture. And it really depends on what weather we see the days before. And I'm going to animate the chart here for you by the hour now. And we're going to see that this stellium of planets here crossing through that MC may trigger a weather event on May 26th at around 1 p.m. in and around there. Sometimes these triggers can actually happen the day after, especially with the moon involved. But that Mercury catching up to that sun in Gemini, that's never really great news. And with tornado research and wind research I've been doing, when that Mercury forms that perfect conjunction with the sun, especially in the sign of Gemini, it can trigger some pretty powerful squalls and wind events. So stick around because this is really fascinating, and I'm going to pull the actual map for this as well for you to see. But this is St. Louis, Missouri now on May the 12th, 2025. Look how much closer that moon is to that fourth house cusp. Whereas in the previous chart, I believe it was about 18 degrees. It's right there. And likewise, the sun is right there on the MC. That is a much more intense energy, thematically speaking, for the St. Louis, Missouri area. So here we have solar maps. You may or may not be able to see the sun's symbol very clearly because this is really dark blue. That's just how I have it on my chart. But that is the sun line, and this here, this dotted yellow line, is the moon line. And look where they are around this geographical area. Now, the moon and the sun together normally mean better weather influences, but the moon being in the sign of Scorpio is all about that intensity. And the sun in Taurus in the opposite sign, those two signs really don't get along. And so that moderating influence of Taurus is completely shut out by the moon. So here is the St. Louis tornado chart. This is for May 17th, 2025. It touched down at approximately 2:30 p.m. local time, St. Louis local time. And Mars and Mercury forming that perfect square. You can see it here. That 0A is 0 degrees, 32 minutes applying. That's a very powerful square. And Saturn is in the mix. It's not a square, but it's a sesquiquadrate, if I pronounce that correctly. And that is at 0 degrees, 42 minutes. Really powerful influence and coming up to that 1 degree with Mercury. So Saturn's just tucked right in there. Those are the three tempest makers for this chart of St. Louis. And the moon is not doing a whole lot here, but it is out of bounds. And the moon moves the weather, so the moon's acting out of whack. And it is actually in a grand trine with Uranus and the ascendant, which is Virgo, and Virgo is a blustery sign. So we could go to see what Mercury is doing. And oh, we're back to Mars again. Keep in mind, this was a shallow dive into the St. Louis tornado. In order to paint the full picture, I really need to see a lot more charts, which I have been working on. So if that's something you really want to see, let me know in the comments below. If you like this content, please do hit like, share this with your astrology loving friends and even your weather loving friends. And if you haven't done so already, please don't forget to hit subscribe. Till next time, keep your eyes on the skies, your feet on the ground, and I look forward to our continued journey together on the Weatherwise path.